Yes.
The first chapter done.
Sorry.
First unit. Is the first unit done?
Yeah, so we had to just wait. Let me open the course plan. I'll discuss it with you once. So the first, so the first unit was introduction to patents, meaning of patents. We've done essentials. See, meaning, essentials, and nature of patent will be covered properly in the unit where we do the Indian Act, because general essentials of patents have made you guys understand that it should be novel, inventive, non-obvious, and industrial application should be there. But properly with the substantive provisions, we'll be covering in the Indian unit. Then we did the various kinds of patents like biotech, genetic, nanotech, etc., and difference between patent and other forms of IPRs. So that's it for the first unit according to the syllabus. I know we did it very soon, then 7 sessions, but it's all right. I mean, we'll need more lectures for the coming units. Now we begin with the second unit, which talks about evolution of patent law, and we do international treaties, conventions here. And that is it for the second unit. So this will take, I think, 2 to 3 classes at max. Let's see how soon we can cover it up. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I have divided the international treaties and conventions into certain categories for us to streamline studying the treaties, because otherwise the conventions will get very confusing. So the first category that I have categorized is general standards of protection. Now this category I have not created myself. This is there on the WIPO website. So general standards of protection basically means that these 3 treaties, TRIPS, Paris, and PLT, they will be laying down the parameters of patentability, what all countries will have to follow. They will lay down when an invention can and cannot be patented. So they will lay down the general standards of protection, meaning general meaning it will be uniform for all countries. Standards means parameters of protection. Now they are not laying down any procedural aspect. So this is what the difference is. The other category of treaties will be laying down how to file the application internationally, what documents you will give, and what will be the procedure, how many steps will be there before you get a patent certificate, etc. So now the first treaty, and these 3 are the most important, especially the TRIPS, because they tell you what can be patented, and that's the core of patent law. So the first treaty we begin with is TRIPS. Now TRIPS has a lot of provisions on a lot of IPRs. I will be covering only the provisions on patent law, which are provided in section 5, articles 27 to 34. So we'll start reading from the PPT itself. So I've copied the provisions here so that we don't have to go to separate websites in the class. Now you can also download the official TRIPS document from the WIPO website, and you can study TRIPS from there also. It's no problem. Now Article 27 tells us what subject matter is patentable. Now these provisions are under TRIPS. They lay down the minimum standards of protection. What the countries have to provide to their citizens is their own discretion, but they have to adhere to the standards laid down in TRIPS. So they can give more protection than what TRIPS provides for, but they cannot go below TRIPS. So if TRIPS says that you have to provide a minimum protection of 15 years for patents, then the countries cannot go below 15 years. They can give anything more than 15, or minimum 15 they have to give. So TRIPS lays down the minimum standards of protection. So Article 27 says patents shall be available for any inventions, whether products or processes. So we read here that TRIPS says that any country can provide a patent for both products and processes. They have used the word or. That means you can provide either for product or process or both. Now I'll briefly tell you what product and process patents are. So let's take an example of a medicine. So if I'm getting my medicine, the end product patented, then that is a product patent. If I'm trying to get the process of creating that medicine patented, like the technique of creating the medicine, the technique of mixing salts for creating one drug, and steps in the creation, then that is a process patent. Now I can also, if I've invented a new process to create a new drug, I can get both a process and a product patent. Now, nobody can copy my product, obviously, and they can also not copy my technique in such cases. Then, in all fields of technology. So, TRIPS says that all fields of technology, inventions belonging to all fields of technology should be allowed patentability. You cannot restrict that, suppose only the medical field can get patents. Any field can get patents. Automobile industry, medical industry, or any random industry can get patents, provided that they are new. So now here TRIPS provides that what are the criteria of patentability. So the first one, they are saying they are new. So basically they are talking about novelty. They involve an inventive step, so non-obviousness that I explained to you, and are capable of industrial application. Now you see from where the Indian law has devised their patent criteria. So novelty, inventive step, and capable of industrial application are provided under Article 27 of TRIPS. Now you need to remember this particular article, the number that Article 27 provides for this. So basically, TRIPS now says that countries have the option of providing both product, process, or any one of them. They have to provide it in all fields of technology. You cannot restrict the field of technology, provided that they are new, inventive step, and capable of industrial application. Countries have the freedom to provide more protections, but these are the minimum standards that they have to adhere to. Patents shall be available. Now, take note of the fact that in some provisions or in some lines, the word may will be used, and in some lines, the word shall will be used. So till now, both both the paras in Article 27 use the word shall. That means this is compulsory. So here the countries don't have an option. So when they say patents shall be available for any inventions, they mean that the countries cannot not provide patent because the word shall is there. So this is a compulsory mandate imposed on countries. In the second para also, they say patents shall be available. That means the countries don't have the freedom here. Patents shall be available and patent rights enjoyable without discrimination as to the place of invention, field of technology, and whether products are imported or locally produced. This means that the countries do not have the option of categorizing inventions on the grounds of where they are invented, the place of invention, the field of technology. Because see, if you see in the second line from the top, it says that patents shall be provided in all fields of technology. So discrimination on the grounds of field are not allowed, and whether products are imported or locally produced. So whether the product is being produced in India or we are importing it, that cannot be a restriction on its patentability. This is a shall provision. So this is a compulsory provision. Countries cannot devise any laws under their Patent Act which does any of these three. I hope this is clear. Members may exclude from patentability inventions the prevention within the territory of the commercial exploitation of which is necessary to protect order, basically public order morality, including protecting human, animal, or plant life or health, or to avoid serious prejudice to the environment. This basically means that the members, now this says members may, so this is a may provision. Now they are giving an option to the countries whether they want to or they don't want to. This is not a shall provision, this is not a mandate. So they are giving every country who is member of TRIPS that they can include provisions under the patent laws to protect their public order and morality, to protect human life, plant life, animal life, or to protect health, or to avoid serious prejudice to the environment. So this is given as an option to the countries that you can protect all these factors of your country by devising certain provisions in your patent law. We are giving you the freedom. You may or may not. Now, members may also exclude from patentability. Now, TRIPS is giving examples of what the members have the freedom to permit. This list is not exhaustive. Members can exclude more things from patentability. These are just illustrative. So illustrative means they are just giving examples and you can include more. And exhaustive means that this is all you can exclude. You cannot go beyond the list. So this list is illustrative. So members may, and also this is a may provision. So obviously they have the option. What can be excluded? First, diagnostic, therapeutic, and surgical methods for the treatment of humans or animals. See, why this is here? Because if somebody gets, suppose, a different kind of X-ray machine. So X-ray machine is a diagnostic tool or a method of treatment of humans or animals. So if somebody has invented a very different X-ray machine and they want to get it patented, and that X-ray machine has been the best invention that has been in the medical history of X-rays. Now, if somebody gets that patented, that means he will have monopoly over the invention in the market. Now, health and medical reasons is something which is very sensitive and it is a matter of public and private interest here. So, if that person is selling that machine at exorbitant prices and hospitals can't afford it, or if he is not ready to even provide the required number of machines in the market, then obviously the public health is going to suffer. So the motive of IPR to ultimately benefit the society gets defeated here. So so TRIPS has provided an option to countries that if you feel necessary, you can exclude these tools from patentability just to create a balance between public and private interest. And India has in fact excluded them from patentability. Plants and animals other than microorganisms. So you can exclude from patentability plants and animals. Now, how even a plant and animal could be patented is like if, for example, there is a plant breeder who has created a mixed breed of, say, some random two plants which has never been created before. Now he might try to get it patented. Now, here the TRIPS says that naturally occurring plants and animals, you have the option of excluding them from patentability. And essentially biological processes. Essentially biological processes means something which is naturally occurring. There is no human intervention. So when we say essentially biological process, remember there is zero human intervention. It means something that is occurring in nature and the production of plants and animals other than non-biological and microbiological processes. Non-biological and microbiological processes are exempted because the words other than are used here. Why? Because non-biological means some person has put their intellect and mind into creating something which is not naturally occurring. And microbiological processes because microorganisms are also excluded in the first line because microorganisms are eligible to be patented. Why? Because they are also created by human intervention. So a naturally occurring process will not be patented, but something which has been created by human mind, you can get it patented. This is the option that TRIPS provides to countries. Now, is patentability criteria clear? Article 27. Is there any doubt till now? Please ask me right now, please.
Ma'am?
So, Article 28.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Ma'am, so this may include, like we talked about GMOs being harmful to health sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
Your voice is echoing.
based,
Could you please be more clear, please?
yes, ma'am, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you before also, but your voice is echoing.
I'm in a closed room, maybe because of that.
Yeah, now you're clear. Tell me.
Yes, ma'am. So, suppose, like we talked about GMOs or other plant materials that could be harmful. So, based on Article 27, we can exclude those.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So Article 28, TRIPS lays down what rights the countries have to or may provide to their patent holders. So this lays down the minimum standards of rights that a patentee can get. A patent shall basically a shall provision, confer on its owner the following exclusive rights. Now, these rights, that means every law has to provide to their patent holders. Nothing below this can be given because this is a shall provision. First, where the subject matter of a patent is a product, to prevent third parties not having the owner's consent from the acts of making, using, offering for sale, selling, importing for these purposes that product. So no person, no third person can, without the consent of the patent holder, make the product, use the product, offer for sell the product, or actually sell the product, or import for any of these purpose the product. So these minimum rights you have to give to a patent holder. If you want to give more rights, you're more than welcome, but nothing less than this can be given. Next, where the subject matter of a patent is a process. So the first point relates to product patents. Second relates to a process patent. To prevent third parties not having the owner's consent from the act of using the process and from the acts of using, offering for sale, selling, importing at least the product obtained directly by that process. See, a process you cannot stop from like importing or something. You will ultimately stop a tool or a hard something tangible. You can only stop, right? So something which directly creates your product, which is directly involved in creation of your product, that process you can stop third parties from infringing upon or intruding into. Patent owners shall also have the right, shall provision again, patent owners shall also have the right to assign or transfer by succession the patent and to conclude licensing contracts. So every patent holder has to be given the right of assignment and transfer of his patent rights. You cannot stop him from transferring his patent right. So these are the minimum rights that every country has to be given by every country has to give to its patent owners. Article 29 talks about the conditions on patent applications. Members shall require that an applicant for a patent shall disclose the invention. See, this provision talks about disclosure. So you can make bullet points when I'm speaking in class because in PPTs you obviously can't like write online. So disclosure is required if an inventor wants a patent. Now I had told you guys earlier what disclosure is and why it's required. I'll just briefly explain to you what it is. So basically I have created an invention on how to operate a laptop and the battery will never run out, or the battery will not run out for a whole month. So for example, nobody has ever created this before and this is an invention, hypothetically. Now when I'm applying for a patent, I have to fully disclose as to how I came up with this invention. How do I work this invention? That means how do I operate it? Every little detail, that if I'm not available or if I'm not there and my patent protection is over after 20 years and my invention falls into public domain, then any person can operate it. So I have to make a full and final disclosure of my invention. This is a precondition if the patent office will grant me a patent or not. If I don't make a full disclosure and the patent office is not satisfied with my disclosure of invention, they will not give me the patent rights over it. That disclosure will be kept a secret for 20 years by the patent office, and after 20 years it will be made public information and my invention will fall into public domain with proper instructions which were given in my disclosure, and anybody could work or use my invention without my consent. That's what patent time period means, right? For 20 years, I have exclusive rights, and after 20 years, I lose all my rights. So the members shall require, now this is a mandatory condition, that's why the Indian Act also has a provision on disclosure, because TRIPS has mandated that this has to be there. So members shall require that an applicant for a patent shall disclose the invention in a manner sufficiently clear and complete. So clarity has to be there, it should be full-fledged disclosure. for the invention to be carried out by a person skilled in the art and may require the applicant to indicate the best mode for carrying out the invention. Now, best mode is an important uh, like term here, because you don't like, so if you think that I don't want people to operate my patent, my invention, even after my patent gets over, and you list down a very difficult mode of operating the invention, for example, because you don't want people to operate it very easily and to utilize your hard work, so you give a very matlab, you give a method of operation which you would have used as a last resort. That's not the best mode of operating the invention. You are not allowed to do that. TRIPS has mandatorily said that you have to disclose the best mode for carrying out the invention, and so has the Indian law, because this is a shall provision. So this is all under the shall provision in one line. So you have to disclose the best mode for carrying out the invention. So you can highlight, like you can write down a point that best mode has to be disclosed, which is known to the inventor at the filing date, or where priority is claimed at the priority date of the application. So whatever best mode of operating the invention, the inventor or the patent applicant knows on the filing date or on the priority date has to be disclosed. The best mode has to be disclosed. Members may require an applicant for a patent to provide information concerning the applicant's corresponding foreign applications and grants. So you may, now this is a may provision, so this the Indian law or any other country will be given an option to provide or not provide information concerning applicants' corresponding foreign applications. So you may require that a patent holder, when he's filing an application, that he basically gives all the details of all other foreign applications he has filed, or he may, or you may not require such a prerequisite. It's your wish, because it is a may provision. So please keep in mind the mandatory provisions and the may provisions. Article 30 talks about exceptions to rights conferred. Meaning, see, when we talk about, so when we see any section that is conferring any right or any other section, so there are provisos to sections, right? So you are like in the 4th year or 5th year. So you guys must know that provisos are a very common aspect of our Indian acts. Provisos basically are exceptions in a way, or something which is going against the aforesaid provision, and they just provide something which is also included, although it is contradicting the above provision. Now, when a country is conferring certain rights on a patentee, they also have the option of conferring such exceptions to those rights to protect. It could be anything, to protect, to maintain some kind of discipline, and so that there is no like hoo-ha about patents, to protect infringements, like to prevent infringements, or any reason you can provide exceptions to certain rights. For example, if I'm providing an exclusive right that you can use your patent anywhere in India for 20 years, I can also put an exception that if you hamper public order morality, if you make an immoral invention, then you will not be given rights. So this is an exception to the right conferred. So TRIPS provides that the members may. Now this is an option that is given to the countries that they want to provide for exceptions or they don't want to provide for exceptions. They can also give unfettered rights also. So members may provide limited exceptions to the exclusive rights conferred by a patent, provided that such exceptions do not unreasonably conflict with the normal exploitation of the patent and do not unreasonably prejudice the legitimate interests of the patent owner, taking account of the legitimate interests of third parties. Now, this article you divide into 3 points. So you write down in your registers wherever you're writing. The first condition of providing exceptions is that the exception should not unreasonably conflict with the normal exploitation of the patent. If I'm providing an exception to a right, that exception should not hamper the person's enjoyment of his patent rights. I cannot intrude in his enjoyment. That exception cannot conflict with the normal exploitation of the patent. Normal exploitation meaning when a patentee is getting a right, what is his normal exploitation? That he gets money out of his invention by selling it or by using it, by licensing it. He can assign it. He can exercise any right as a patent holder. I cannot put any exception that conflicts with the normal exploitation of the patent. So the first condition is it should not conflict, unreasonably conflict. Second, do not unreasonably prejudice the legitimate interests of the patent holder. Any legitimate legal interest or legal right that a patent holder has in his invention, I cannot put any exception that unreasonably causes prejudice to those legitimate interests. They have to be fair and reasonable, taking account of legitimate interests of the third parties. We also have to consider legitimate interests of third parties. Now, what can be a third party? What legitimate interest can a third party hold in my invention? Like, how is a third party even relevant in when I'm the patent holder and it's my invention? What legal rights can some other person have? This comes into play when I've transferred my patent rights. For example, I've licensed my patent rights for 10 years. Out of 20 years, I'm licensing them to a pharmaceutical company for 10 years, and the rest of the 10 years, I will cancel the license and I'll be the owner. Now, that pharmaceutical company for 10 years is a legitimate third party who has legitimate rights. So we will also protect the rights of those parties when they're legally in a contract with respect to my invention. So when a country may, because they have an option, provide exceptions to rights of patent holders, they have to adhere to these three conditions. They have to protect exploitation of the patent, they have to protect legitimate interests of the owner and legitimate interests of third parties. Article 31, other use without authorization of the right holder. Where the law of a member allows for other use, okay, the 7 is here by mistake, where the law of a member allows for other use of the subject matter of a patent without authorization of the right holder, including use by the government or third parties authorized by the government, the following provisions shall be respected. See, when can you allow a third person to use somebody's invention without even their consent? Like, what example can be there? So, compulsory licenses you must have studied about in your third year. So, if I am a patent holder and I am not allowing anybody to use my patent, I'm not selling my invention at a reasonable, affordable price to the public, or I am not selling my invention in India. So I'm hoarding my invention that I'll go outside and sell it only. I will not work my invention in India. I'm giving examples. If I do these things, then the government has the right to issue a compulsory license. Compulsory license meaning it is not voluntary. I am not giving my consent to it. It is being imposed on me. So it is a compulsory license to some third party that they can use my invention, but there must be a public interest consideration in the same. It could not be some person who just wants to use my invention and I'm not letting him. He can apply for a compulsory license. No, you cannot. There should be a private. There should be a public interest aspect to it. So, what conditions have to be adhered to under TRIPS while granting such authorized uses without permission of the patentee are: authorization of such use shall be considered on individual merits, meaning such cases will be dealt with by their individual merits, as in you will see it from a case to case perspective. There will not be any uniform parameters that you will set for granting third party authorizations in all cases. You will take each case according to its own facts, its merits, its circumstances, and you will deal with it on individual merits. Such use may only be permitted if prior to such use, the proposed user, meaning the person who wants a compulsory license, the third party, has made efforts to obtain authorization from the right holder on reasonable commercial terms and conditions, and that such efforts have not been successful within a reasonable period of time. If I'm trying to get a patent over, for example, so Akanksha owns a patent a, over a life-saving medicine. So that medicine cures brain tumors, and no other medicine can cure. Hypothetically, we are assuming that no other medicine can cure brain tumor. Now, I am a doctor, and I feel that she is selling the medicine at a very high price. For example, she's selling one dose for 10 lakh rupees. So it is not affordable by anyone, and I want a compulsory license. So the second point says that for me to obtain a compulsory license in such a case, I should I should first go to Akanksha. I should ask for her permission to use the drug, and I should offer to to use her patented invention at reasonable commercial terms. So I should not say that if you're selling it for 10 lakhs, I want it for 10 rupees. That is not reasonable. I should at least quote 10,000 rupees. It should be a balanced offer, and she has refused. So I have tried multiple times to obtain her consent or a voluntary license, but she does not want to give me the license. So I have made efforts to obtain her authorization on reasonable terms and conditions, and my efforts have not been successful. So only then I'm eligible to apply. So the second point says this. The third says the scope and duration of such use shall be limited to the purpose for which it was authorized. So if I'm trying to get her drug patented, or not patented, but just try to get a compulsory license on it, so I should be, my motive of getting the invention to use should be what she made the invention for. So I cannot manipulate the drug and use it for some other personal use or other medicinal purposes. It should only be used to cure brain tumor. I cannot change the scope or duration. And in the case of semiconductor technology, shall only be for public non-commercial use or to remedy a practice determined after judicial or administrative process to be anti-competitive. Meaning, so semiconductor technology is basically Semiconductor Integrated Circuits Act. You must have read in your third year. Basically, they are small circuits that are put in technologies like mobiles and laptops. So if you are getting a compulsory license for a semiconductor technology, it should first only be for public non-commercial use. So you cannot earn money out of it. It should be something you're doing only for public interest without any commercial motives. Or you want to remedy a practice which has been declared to be anti-competitive. So if some particular company, for example, is indulging in anti-competitive activities, then you are just trying to remedy that. You're just trying to correct that. So it should not have commercial motives. Fourth, such use shall be non-exclusive. If I am, now this is a shall provision, so take note of that. So if I am getting a compulsory license for her medicine, I cannot get a exclusive license. That means I cannot be the only person who will be using that, because I'm not the patent holder. I'm just a I'm just a responsible citizen who wants a particular drug which is very effective to reach more patients. So I don't have an ulterior motive. So I don't want an exclusive license. I want just that I can do my part in the society. So such use shall be non-exclusive. You cannot grant exclusive rights to a compulsory license holder. Such use shall be non-assignable. I cannot assign the invention further to earn money, because then if I obtain the rights, I can easily assign those rights to other people so that I can earn more money, but I'm not allowed to do that. Except with that part of the enterprise or goodwill which enjoys such use. Basically, somebody who's already in contract with me, while granting the compulsory license, they can be third party users, but I cannot personally assign the patent. I hope this is clear. Everything is clear. I hope I'm not going too fast, or it's not getting too much for you to process in one class. Next point is, any such use shall be authorized predominantly for the supply of domestic market of member authorizing such use. If I am obtaining a patent on that brain tumor drug for in India, Okay, and in India particularly, say I say South India. Now I have to predominantly supply that product in the area where I have obtained the patent. This is basically to boost domestic suppliers and domestic market, so that you don't get into international trading, for example, and you forget the purpose for which you took the compulsory license for the benefit of your own society. So this is basically for that purpose. Then seventh point, authorization for such use shall be liable, subject to adequate protection of legitimate interests of the person so authorized, to be terminated if and when the circumstances which led to it cease to exist or are unlikely to recur. Meaning, so let's take the example of the pandemic. So right now, COVID is at its peak, okay, and I have obtained a compulsory license from a person who invented a medicine, not a medicine. Okay, let's take an example of a medicine because there is no medicine for COVID yet. So he has created a medicine which can successfully cure COVID, and I took the compulsory license for it. Now, uh, currently the pandemic is present and there are a lot of COVID cases, so the medicine is required. After say 5 years, the medicine is not required anymore because COVID has been successfully eradicated. There are zero cases in like throughout the world, so there is no chance of spreading. Now, since those circumstances in which I took the compulsory license now don't exist or are not there anymore, then such authorization, this license can be terminated. They can take away my license because those circumstances are no longer in existence now, for which I took the license. Next point, the right holder shall be paid adequate remuneration in the circumstances of each case, taking into account the economic value of the authorization. Basically, after calculating the economic value of the invention, the right holder will be paid adequate remuneration. Basically, the person from whom the license is being taken, he will be compensated. So in such cases, a percentage of royalty is given to that person. Ninth point, the legal validity of any decision. Just a moment, please. The legal validity of any decision relating to the authorization of such use shall be subject to judicial review or other independent review by distinct higher authority in that member. So if you are giving authorization to somebody, the validity of it can be determined by judicial review or other independent review by whatever judicial authority is there in that member country. So there is no unfettered discretion given to any authority. It will be subject to scrutiny by the judiciary of your country. Now this is also a shall provision because it says shall be subject to judicial review. Any decision relating to the remuneration provided in respect of such use shall be subject to judicial review. So basically, the first judicial review could be relating to whether or not the license should be granted, the authorization should be granted, and the next judicial review will be scrutinizing the amount of remuneration that is being paid to the patentee. So both can be judicially reviewed. Now, is there any confusion in any point that you did not understand, or because I was going too fast so you could not grasp? Please, you can just go through the points once more and ask me. The first one, I think, should be clear individual merits. Go through these points. Just read them once, and if there's anything you don't understand, so please ask me. I'll change the slide in a minute so you can read. Take your time. I'll change it in a minute or two. Read it carefully, please. So I think everything's clear since there are no doubts. The next articles we'll, I think, continue in the next class, and then we'll begin with the Paris Convention. So that's it for today. If there is any query, please ask me. Okay, then we'll wind up the class. Thank you so much. You can leave. I'll see you tomorrow.